Welcome to the What's Appening podcast. I'm your host, Paul Murphy, and this season we're interviewing GPT creators. What's Appening is brought to you by 3Advance, with a startup development team that doesn't just prompt LLMs, we program them. Today, our very special guest is the one and only Philip Delvecchio. Philip is someone I've got to know over the last few weeks and months, connected with from the wonderful, I think, Lindsay Browning from Monday.com connected us, Phil. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. Great to be here.
Well, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to get into that. As I say, I've been following you on LinkedIn. I love your content. I just said earlier, we seem to be in the same worlds, and I love what you're sharing. I love what you're getting involved in. But I would like to take it back and just, you're one of the earliest GPTs on the store, I believe. And one of the things that's impressive whenever we check it out is the number of conversations and users you have. But let's take it back to the beginning, Phil. Like, what brought you into this new world of AI, and how did you come up with KeyMate?
Yeah, so we are, we're one of the OGs. We were a plugin before we were a GPT. So I'm happy to share a little bit about that story. But really, what ended up happening, and I think this is there's kind of two different kinds of people. There are the people who have been working in AI for many, many years, many, many lonely years, and then finally now just sort of having their time in the sun. Versus people who, have been in the tech space for a long time, are always looking to see what's happening, trying to stay with the trends, and are recognizing the power of what's happening, particularly with generative AI. And so my CTO is in the camp of the lonely builders for many, many years. He has a master's in AI and has built products that have went on to generate over $80 million annually. So he's been in it for a long time. I myself am a tech enthusiast. I've been working in the tech space for a long time, mainly through operations and startup support. So I used to run accelerator programs.
Very cool.
And when I saw what was happening with the generative AI space, I got very excited, and I really knew that it was going to be something groundbreaking and life-changing for many industries. And so I started looking around at the space early last year, and then I ended up hearing from these co-founders to join in and become a co-founder of KeyMate. So happy to share more with you about the origins and everything like that as well.
I definitely do want to hear. I've met Oscar. He's awesome. I just signed up for his newsletter, and I will include a link to Oscar's newsletter down below. But tell me how he got in touch with you, or how this thing sparked off.
Yeah, so I actually connected with Oscar and Utku, the two other co-founders, through a totally different company during a program that they were in. The program was focused on helping bring companies into the US market. So it was Turkish startups coming into the US.
Yeah. And
I had been meeting with these startups to provide mentorship, pitch feedback, and different kinds of go-to-market support. And so they flew me out to Turkey to meet with these founders. I gave a workshop and did some mentorship. And I really hit it off with Utku and Oscar with a different company. And so when KeyMate came around, which was really, really the brainchild of Oscar, the CTO, he was working with generative AI. He was developing products, and he wanted to use ChatGPT to look up code libraries and try to write code with ChatGPT. All these things that we kind of take for granted now. Right. Obviously, we're not fully there with some applications, but at the time, something as simple as there being a data cutoff was a major issue for someone who's trying to write code when libraries are literally being updated monthly, if not weekly. And so he built an application. It actually started out as an iOS app to just search on the web for something that was more up to date, pull it in, and then work with it. And it was so beneficial to him that he decided when ChatGPT announced, "Hey, we're going to do plugins," he was one of the first people to apply. And really pushed to get on. And so we ended up being accepted as a plugin when plugins were available on ChatGPT. This is pre the GPT world. And we quickly became one of the top plugins in the plugin store within the first month. And this actually allowed us to revenue fund our development and growth from the start.
That's great. So he scratched his own itch and then saw the value you could bring to the business and took it from there. Yeah, It's funny. The first time I found your GPT, I was looking for it in the store, and it stands out. You have 100,000 users, but hearing the origin story gets more interesting still. Personally, I invest in Irish startups, and I'm trying to do the same thing, is help Irish startups come to the United States. That's how I know Lindsay. We're both members of the Digital Irish Venture Fund, But I love that. It's like you really get, through these initiatives, you get access to some of the smartest, incredible people. And, you got so much to value add as well. They just thought, listen, who do we need to make it happen in the US? And Phil was the first person to mind, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had actually come on as an advisor for their previous company. So I had been speaking with them regularly, basically weekly for several years. So I've known these guys for a while. And their previous company was actually similar, not similar, but it was in the same space. It was an AI face recognition app for you to find your photos, like in marathons and clubs and different experiences. And unfortunately, because it was very event-oriented, when COVID happened, there wasn't really much use case for it. So we continued to conversate, but they kind of put the company on the back burner. They all kind of had to do their own thing to figure out the COVID world. But when KeyMate started to take off, they were seeing just how successful it was, particularly in the US. I mean, it was mostly US users, although we do have users from all over the world. So I was one of the first person they reached out to say, hey, we don't know where this is going, but we're really excited about it, and we'd love to get you back involved in some way. So originally the idea would be that I would come on as an advisor.
Yeah.
But after, when I saw what they were doing and how successful it was, I was like, you guys need to strike while the iron is hot. And so I basically lined them up with meetings with people in LA, San Francisco, and New York City based off of my network. And I used to run top funnel sales services. So I just did some cold outreach even to get connected to different people.
Awesome.
And set them up with a number of different meetings. And I happened to be on that side of the world. So I went down and met with them in San Francisco. And I think that just being there together, having those meetings, the energy and the excitement, really just drove us all to say, hey, this is something special. We should really band together. And so they asked me to be a co-founder after meeting with them in San Francisco.
And I think you said you've been monetized since July of 23. Is that right? You've been, and
yeah,
leading from that is like, at this point, you've built up a team, you've got a solid product out there, you have some serious traction. How did the business grow and what's the next steps?
Yeah. So, I mean, when it first launched, they were just eating the server costs. And I think that it ended up being over 10K in like the first month because there was just a major pop. And so they were in trouble. They were like, we can't afford to do this. And they actually had gotten some really good feedback from a YC partner, Michael Siebel, who said that you should always monetize as early as possible. So they just were like, well, let's flip a switch and try to figure out how to monetize. They actually worked with another entrepreneur friend of theirs to help build out plugin monetization. There's a company called Plugin Lab, and I think some companies still use them. We do. We still use them. And so they actually helped to build the mechanisms for being able to charge within the ChatGPT ecosystem. And so once things turned on, we basically were off to the races. The biggest thing was just around the continuation of everything, right? Like our main value prop was around the data cutoff. Obviously, there's less of a data cutoff now, and also ChatGPT has their own default browsing. And before we even kind of encountered that challenge, obviously, we had started building out a memory database for each of our users. And so what our users are able to do today is not just search and source information from the web and from different sources, but they can also store that. So they can store their chats, their links, their documents, basically any kind of text information into a personalized memory hub. And then that memory hub serves as a second brain to ground their AI work. And so we have our users building out these different memory modules that they're using for specific use cases today. So you talked about the GPT. Obviously, when they started saying, hey, we're going to be getting rid of plugins, and there's this whole there was rumors of GPTs or whatever they were. As soon as they announced it, we within a few days switched things around, and we have been supporting a GPT version of KeyMate since December of 2023. And you mentioned we have 100K chats now with this GPT, but that we were a plugin first. There's no stats on how many people were using our plugin. So it's in the hundreds of thousands for sure that have used KeyMate since our start.
And you're monetizing directly, and I want to hear more about the plan and how you onboard customers there. But what about has OpenAI been in touch with you around monetization directly through the store as well? Is that something you're keeping an eye on, or have you realized, listen, where you're going to make money is in the product somewhere else, and it's less of a concern? How do you feel about all that, and even holistically, the GPT store and its monetization?
That's a really good question. We were really excited to hear that there was going to be monetization with ChatGPT. Obviously, ChatGPT has been an incredible partner, unofficially or officially, right? We're a member of a special community that they have for GPT creators. We had some pretty regular communication with them throughout the process of their development. And so when they announced monetization, it made a lot of sense, obviously. I think for us, what we're looking at, and what we've gotten a lot of feedback, to be honest, from other mentors. We just finished an accelerator program,
cool,
and they're saying that it's not the most robust to remain in one single ecosystem.
Right.
We're always going to be a supporter of ChatGPT, and we're always going to be a builder within that ecosystem. We're very excited about what OpenAI is doing and how they've really paved the way. But we're also seeing a lot of value in different LLMs, and there's a lot of different use cases for these different LLMs. So a lot of our users who are using KeyMate GPT in ChatGPT are also using other LLMs for other use cases and purposes. Will there be a one winner take all kind of scenario? I doubt it, but we just want to be able to give as much value as possible to our users, and our users want to use KeyMate across multiple different LLM platforms.
Yeah, that's what struck me when I was using it, was with the thought that, like, we've done a lot of work with Gemini and Claude and Haiku, and some LLMs are better than others, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more that are more specialized. And I feel like the value for me, even more so, is connecting the different, being able to choose what's best for what actions, even learning what LLM might be the better one to interact with. And that's I think that's another huge value add I think you bring, and not be tied to one spot. Having said that, talk more about the memory management and the value that you're providing right now. It seems super valuable, but also the other side of it is, is OpenAI a threat to that as well? How Apple do it, right? They watch the best apps and then they replicate it and then they flush them out of business. Or do you fear what OpenAI might do to you? And then as a response to that, how do you keep on moving?
Yeah, so there's a few things there. We do think a lot about it. We recognize that OpenAI is a partner, and also in some ways, a potential competitor, right? There's always this question. I always refer to them as sort of adjacent competitors. They're not directly competing, but they're somebody who could maybe eventually try to do something that we're doing. With default browsing that they included, even though it's using Bing and there's, a whole different argument around what's a better experience, that was a moment where they said, hey, you all are doing great with this. We're going to do it too.
Right.
And it's not, I doubt that they looked at KeyMate and thought, let's copy KeyMate. Yeah. It's just a natural progression of, we need data. Why not resource it from the internet? So,
yeah.
That being said, when you think about memory and memory management, there's a couple things that we're kind of looking at that makes us feel not particularly worried. Let's just say that. The first thing is that while Sam Altman did say, and there's an interview just a couple months ago, that they really do believe that personalization is going to be the best differentiation for models. Their core purpose in the way that their model is built is to be as general as possible for as many people as possible. So they are adding in, they mentioned we have memory now, right? It's a very, very thin layer of memory, because they need the model to be able to be as applicable as possible. In fact, I can't remember what the article was, but it was a recent conversation where, I think that maybe at some point OpenAI did think that they were sort of going to be the verticalization of every application. They were going to come in and build, and I think they have sold multi-million-dollar deals to do that. But But more recently, they've seen so much more value in people building on top of them. So letting us and other users be those verticalizations. And I think even the GPT monetization is or even just the GPT concept is moving in that direction of saying, you know, we're just going to get really good at creating the best possible world model that we can. And you can go ahead and find a way to narrow things down to that specific person, use case, industry. So that application layer, and there's been a lot of companies that are basically just taking a very unique niche application and getting and doing a really good job in tweaking things that aren't necessary to basically make it the best possible platform for them to use. And at the end of the day, the layer is that world model. It's the open AI. So,
and then when it comes to this, because KeyMate allow, like when you're using KeyMate, say I'm searching something across different sites, say Twitter or Reddit. What about the rights, and what about access to those sites? Is that something that's gonna be a problem? Is there any loophole? Is there any like rings that you have to jump through in order to keep good on that side of things, or where do you see that going?
There's two possibilities here. Obviously, there is this, there are sites that have basically made it so you can't view them, right? And sometimes when you ask ChatGPT to go to a certain site, it will say, "Oh, I'm like not allowed to view that site." We use Google's official API. So anything that Google API has access to, we have access to, and that's something that is also a permissions-based thing. So we're not doing any kinds of, we're not pulling any kinds of tricks or anything like that. We're just using the API. So any public available information that you could search on the internet, we have access to that. And so we can't get access to anything that's private behind, a username or password on Twitter, LinkedIn, or Reddit. But some people have their posts that are publicly available if you search them on the web, and we do have access to those sites.
Very cool. What are what kind of feedback have you got from users? What's the kind of, being a startup and so early, like you're a year and a half in, what kind of feedback have you got from users, and what sort of what gets you excited? What sort of spurs you on in terms of what they're finding KeyMate and what your users are doing with it?
We've gotten so much feedback, and I was actually just combing through it because we're in the process of doing another analysis and assessment. We get a lot of feedback coming in through various forums. We also have been running campaigns to talk to our power users to better understand how they're using it. I think the thing that excites me the most is when we meet somebody, particularly these power users, who we've really solved it for them. Their core need is totally satisfied by KeyMate. It makes me feel that we're really onto something, right? We have this hypothesis around what we're building being valuable. But when you have someone say, I've compared KeyMate to Copilot that my company offers through Microsoft, and I prefer KeyMate, that warms my heart. Or when someone comes up to me and says, because of KeyMate building this dynamic memory alongside my work, KeyMate knows me better than any of these other GPTs or any of those platforms. And so I feel most comfortable using KeyMate, is great. Obviously, we're not pushing relational dynamics with our platform, but I personally believe that if you can turn generative AI from an assistant into a coworker, you have a high multiple power in making connections and driving stickiness. I don't want, you don't have to form a friendship with your AI coworker, but if you feel like that coworker knows you, you're going to want to work with them more, just like in the real world. So for me, that actually has a really, really important impact. And then of course there's a few cases where someone will just tell us a use case of what they were able to accomplish because of KeyMate. And it still blows me away. I work in the AI space, and I'm still oh, it took you 2 hours to work on that RFP and you won $1 million, and you were going up against a bunch of other people who weren't using KeyMate. And to me, that just is okay, this is amazing. Why wouldn't anyone want to use this? But of course, there's all kinds of other feedback that we get, people, especially one-shotters, I'm sure you get conversations with this a lot, where someone tries something out, they write one prompt, it doesn't do exactly what they wanted it or expected it to do, and they move on. So we're in the battle trenches with that as well, getting a lot of a lot of those kinds of people who are just coming in, because you asked this previously, I didn't fully answer. A lot of our users are coming in through the ChatGPT ecosystem. And so you have a very wide range of users when you're thinking about, all of the ChatGPT Plus and now all of the free users as well who have access to GPTs.
That's super interesting, because we have, we've seen a couple of different things. One is like people creating a GPT and then being spurred to create a product. And like, that's where we come in. That's what excites me from a business perspective. But then there's the other side where, I just interviewed one of our clients, Selfspeak, who we're in the middle of developing a product. We've proved the concept. We're developing a product, and now he's gone back into the GPT store to put a micro version of his app there almost as a lead generation for his full product. And it can work both ways here. And I feel like you're right in the middle of that. You're proving that at the moment. You come from GPT to product and then back again. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, because we were kind of an iOS app first, then plugin. Then GPT, now platform, but also will continue to evolve with the GPT. So we've moved around quite a bit. I would tell, I have a good friend of mine who has a really great platform, and it's all about uploading and hosting very simple HTML and PDF files.
Yeah.
And I tell him literally every time I talk to him, you need to make a GPT. I think that people need to, if nothing else, it's a channel for acquisition.
Totally.
And so I highly recommend that anybody who's building on a platform, even if it doesn't have like a crazy strong AI use case, you should explore using the GPT marketplace as a place to acquire customers.
Totally. It's fantastic for validation as well. I had my own product idea, and this happens all the time, where it was a mental health app that we called Untrigger, that would speak in a voice, and the UX would be amazing and allow you. It would create affirmations so that you could repeat them, calm yourself down, and then learn from it and move on. I ended up creating this on the GPT store and almost invalidated my idea, because it works as well as a GPT as my full product would ever do. And unless suddenly I get so many users there, it wouldn't make sense at all. But it's fascinating. I think there is the fear sometimes that OpenAI is, and what they're building there can threaten what you're trying to make. But if you add that extra value and make yourself platform agnostic, or at least platform integrating, there's so much potential. And especially with the team that you have, your team is you're built upon the technology expertise that your team has, and you're always a few steps ahead. It seems you're always a few steps ahead, and I'm sure the next thing that happens, you'll be a few steps ahead again. And it's clear to see it right now. Do you have things in your roadmap that are super secret that you're holding on to at the moment, or maybe presumptions that might come to be?
Yeah, we have some thoughts and ideas, and thank you. That was very kind of you to say. And I'll just comment on just one thing, just around the whole world of the ChatGPT kind of fear of being gobbled up and everything like that. Someone said to me once that there's two things that you can do that are super important to kind of avoid that fear. The first thing is to really try to think critically around what OpenAI won't do. And that doesn't necessarily mean what AI is incapable of doing, right? Because at the end of the day, we can take our minds very far into the world of what AI will eventually do, and just say we can all just give up, But that's not really what we're looking to do. We're here to build successful products that are going to do well over the course of anywhere from 5 to 10 years, if you're thinking in venture terms. And so really thinking about what you can kind of get ideas of where OpenAI is heading with how they're building. We talked about a little bit earlier around, why their core focus would be to build a world model, and what's a response to that maybe is necessary. We think that getting really deep and niche and personalized with memory is very valuable. People talk about building out even smaller models. I was just speaking to somebody today who has a whole platform where they're building out custom models that are actually small language models. But so they're not very good at like a chat experience, but they're extremely good at doing other things generatively with a very specific set of data and inputs. When it comes to the sort of the other side of it, which is kind of where we're headed, we get a lot of feedback around going B2B, and that's really where a lot of the world is at right now. We have some very strong competitors in the B2B space, actually, and we certainly will do that. I think we see a path from a bottom-up approach because we started out as B2C. We have these what we refer to as prosumers, who are professional consumers there's very few people who are using KeyMate for just very personal uses. Many people, or most people, are using it for some kind of professional use case. And so these people are coming to us already and saying, hey, I want to figure out how to share my memory with my colleagues, or hey, I'm actually really interested in being able to set up shared licenses, or do you have any way of creating access control across memory? And so because they're already asking for it, it's like, okay, this is a natural step to then just go to these users and then try to open up different accounts right from a user who's already using it, which there's plenty of examples of doing that successfully. The other side of it is this world of consumer memory and the value of staying kind of in the B2C space. I don't, you look at character AI and some of these other kind of chatbot companies that are creating these, personas that people are interacting with. I don't know about that, but I for us, obviously character AI is doing incredibly well. I think that there's a value in sort of this, like thinking really creatively around what else you can do if you were able to create a curated memory module around a specific topic or a specific person. What are some of these things you could do? We're thinking about even just like in the influencer world. We imagine getting access to Gary V's brain, or getting access to Elon Musk's brain, right? And being able to. People always say, I want to pick your brain. I've always hated that term, but maybe they could just give you an AI brain to pick, and then you can go ahead and learn from that. So I think there's a lot there that we're thinking about. We're kind of playing around with, we're casting vision into, and even maybe starting to build some potential future implementation in that space.
I love that. I really love that. That's fascinating. Whether it's a person or whether it's a topic or something even deeper, it's fantastic. Let me ask Phil at the moment, like you've got the business off the ground, you're growing your team. I saw you were all over New York Tech Week recently. You are monetized, you're making money, you've funded the growth this so far. What's next? Are you raising money? Have you got high growth expectations? What's the plan from the business perspective?
Yeah. I mentioned this briefly earlier. A big thing is going to be launching channel distribution to be able to do multi-LLM work. And so we have different roadmaps around different product features that are going to facilitate that. In terms of the business side of things, we are just starting to open up a fundraise. We have a safe that we're going to be reaching out to a number of different investors. We just finished an accelerator program called Founders Boost, which is an incredible free, no equity program that took place over the past 8 weeks. We are totally bootstrapped, so we are undiluted, and so we're excited. We have revenue, we have traction. We're an undiluted company, and we are a genuine AI company. So I think there's a lot of interest there. So we're going to be trying to find a strategic investor. I think for us, we really want an investor who is going to get excited about working with us. At the end of the day, we are a pre-seed team, and there's a lot of things that we don't know. And so getting connected to an investor who can help open up their ecosystem, who can provide us some feedback on development and growth would be great. So yeah, I do have a list. I've already started to reach out to some people, and I'm starting to get inbound, which is really awesome. So the work of going to the events and pitching at the events and going through these programs is starting to pay off.
Love it. That's great. And are you looking for VC, or is it more angel at this point? Like you've held on to things this long, and then it's fantastic. Like you say, you're monetizing, you're growing without the additional outside investment. But what's the first step? Are you looking for institutional money yet, or is it individuals?
Yeah, I think that we're definitely open to both. We're looking to raise, around 1.5 million, and so that's not a ton. I can definitely see one VC coming in and saying, "Hey, we just want to do that whole check."
Yeah.
But again, I think it's more about the person, the alignment at this point. So it could come from a firm, or it can come from an angel, or even a syndicate. We're very open to that.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'm certainly interested in what you're doing, and I'm a member of a couple of funds. You're not Irish, so you're not getting into that one, unfortunately, Phil. But there are others.
Well, my grandmother's last name is O'Connor, so don't call me out.
Oh, okay, good man. All right. Let you on the field. Get on the field for a bit.
There we go.
Love it. So what else? I do want to flip the table over to you, Phil. Is there anything else you want to share? Any questions I haven't asked you yet?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that you covered most of the bases. I really loved your question just around kind of the future of where things are headed. I am curious, just from your perspective. You've spoken to a lot of founders, a lot of people who are building in this space. What are you seeing? You asked a lot of questions around fear of what ChatGPT is going to do and all those kinds of things. I'm sure you're not just pulling these things out of thin air. So, what's your perspective and insight on kind of where the market is going and
totally
the different builders in the market?
It swings widely from at one point thinking OpenAI was going to take over the world to not at all, because especially like you mentioned, like from the small models all the way through to the open source, and even Apple recently announcing that they'll have their own on-device model. Like it's hard to tell really. I think OpenAI has first movers advantage, right? And that is the brand name that people associate with this whole movement. I think they have a lot of power. I think they will. I think like the App Store, they will yield that power. And I think it's like, and it's in the same way. I think a lot of startups need to be wary about what they're making that is not just a feature. I think your vision and what you're doing is much more than that. And I think while maybe it started that way with being able to search the web in real time, it's obvious that you're looking a lot wider, and you've got traction. You're learning specifically from your customers as to what comes next, which is vital. But what do I see? I see that and this is what interests me, there's a middle area here. There's the AI world where companies like OpenAI and Perplexity and all of these sort of high tech, deep tech companies are doing what they do. And there's a lot of startups popping up there that are going to find it very, very difficult. But there's also the middle area, the area that I've been working in for the longest time, which is just basic use cases in normal, boring industries. There's a lot of industries that are untouched by this and will need to. And there's always a need for user experience. And I think it's like there's so many opportunities, I think, for individuals that are maybe not technical to test the waters and open up potential for again, very specific use cases in certain industries there's like almost unlimited opportunities there, I think, at the moment. But again, it's where it's all going and what happens next. Like everyone's talking about AGI, and whether that it really is a year or two off or 10 years or never going to happen, who knows? That would change the ball game completely. If we're talking about having, assistants that run every part of every function in a business, that's going to change the dynamics of every business and every new. They've talked, like Sam Altman's talked about this as well. It's like, when is the first $1 billion one-person company going to appear? That kind of thing is the thing that sort of like, maybe worries me or concerns me or makes me not really understand what the future is. But I think that's further off, and I think there's the middle area where there's so much space to improve and optimize. And, you know, I think I was on a call earlier on, and, you know, I was on a call earlier on. There was a lot of optimism from Jeffrey Bradley, who's one of our clients, and he's just talking about how so far in his own work, AI has created space for him. It's created the ability to have time for human interaction. And I think ultimately that it can do that. It's like these tools are really going to optimize the difficult things we do. And if that's implemented in across the board, and entrepreneurs are popping up from these unknown places that they never were able to before, I think that's fantastic. And, you know, bring it on. And we're here to help, and here to enjoy the experiment.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. I mean, you think about just what happened, even just with, you know, let's just take the smartphone, for example. Obviously, there's some interesting comparisons when you think about the GPT store and the App Store. You know, these smartphones, they did kind of take and gobble up certain things, right? But there was also multiple apps that became very successful. And when you use an iPhone, a few of like the utility apps are used regularly that are just native, but most of them are apps that were built by other people. Yeah. And so I do think that I think that people's concerns about, you know, these LLMs just doing everything for everyone is, I just don't think is that realistic. There's always going to be a need, as you said, to just build use cases on top of a platform. Yeah. And some of those use cases are going to become very successful companies. They might seem like, oh, is that really going to be a thing? But you know, I've talked to some people who are building out application layers who are doing very well, and I think that they're going to continue to do very well because OpenAI is just one company. Even though Google is very big, we've seen how difficult it is for them to get things out and ship things. Right. And so, you know, I don't really concern myself too much with that. I think for me, just thinking like, even thinking about AGI and, you know, if we did reach it, you know, people are saying we already have AGI and they're just not telling anyone. You know, I think the gap between having it and knowing what to do with it is going to actually be a little bit wider than we realize. Yeah. And for me, I mean, honestly, just being kind of a nerd, like I'm excited about all these robots. I don't know if you see, I mean, there's the application of robots plus AI is very interesting to me. I'd love to, you know, have some kind of robot assistant who's helping out with various things in the house. And I can't remember the person who said this, but it went as a comment that went viral. I think it was an author, and she was saying that I want my AI to like do my dishes and my laundry so that I can write and do art, yes. Not have my AI write and do my art so that I have more time to do the dishes and the laundry. And I think that really is like, for me, it's like, come on, like let's get those, like, you know, those core, like just get the chores done, the various things done to free up our time to live life well. Because, you know, the way that we've created the working world is just, I think, so different, I think, maybe than what we as humanity maybe we're hoping and expecting. Yes. And I think we've caught ourselves in this system, and we're thinking maybe AI is our way out. Maybe our AI is our opportunity to enjoy life in a way that I think some deep down we know that we really need and want. Yeah. So I am excited about that. I'm excited about the opportunity for AI, like you said, to free up time for living life more fully. I love that. It's finally unleashing the promise that technology had for us, right? AI has a potential of fulfilling that promise. And I can certainly get behind that. Yeah, we will see. We will see if that is the direction it goes. I do have hope that's where we're headed. Excellent. Well, Philip, thanks for coming on. Before we wrap it up, do you want to let people know how to find you, how to find KeyMate? Give us the elevator pitch and send them the right direction. Yeah, absolutely. So you can always go to www.keymate.ai to find us there. You can also find us as a GPT in ChatGPT's GPT store. So if you just search for KeyMate in the search bar, you'll find us pretty easily. Would love for you to try us out. And you can reach me on LinkedIn or via email at phil@keymate.ai. So always happy to talk to new folks who are interested in AI, and would love to collaborate and work with anybody who's interested.
Awesome. Well, that's right. Yeah. If you want to become a true power searcher and you want to take advantage of that second brain, KeyMate is where it's at. Phil,
right.
Thank you again for coming on the show and having a chat. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you, everybody else, for tuning in and listening. This is What's Happening podcast. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us, obviously, on the usual Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. Don't forget to go to 3advance.com/news as well and sign up for our newsletter. The What's Happening newsletter comes out every week. It's news in tech and memes. It's a lot of fun. If you like the podcast, you will love the newsletter. So get on over there. And if there's anything I can help you with or Philip can help you with, you'll see our details below. Get in touch and make it happen. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.